Hello, hello. How are you? Welcome to this conversation today. My name is Linda Downey, and I'm a transformational health and spiritual coach. And I want to talk to you today about 4 pillars of supporting your life so that it's vibrant and healthy and joyful. And it's also the 4 pillars of reparenting yourself in past trauma, from past trauma. So they go together because it's very difficult to have a vibrant, joyful, healthy life now when you still have trauma from the past and trauma from your childhood in the picture. So it really is, I could have titled this conversation either way: how to parent yourself from past trauma, or how to create a life that's vibrant and joyful now. So as you're joining me in this conversation, this is an episode of the Unconditioned Life podcast, and it's also streaming on social media in multiple places. So I would love for you to say hello. Let me know where you're listening from. If you watch the replay later, please say hello. And if you have any questions, absolutely pop them in. If I see them while we're talking, I will respond. And if I see them later, I'll respond then. Okay. So I would love for you to listen to this conversation from your own life. So listen to this conversation, and while you're listening, map it onto, do I see that in my life? Or where does that show up? Or what have I noticed? Anything like that, I think, would make it just much more helpful than a conversation, right? So, okay, let's dive in. The 4 pillars that are really important in order to have a life that feels happy and joyful and vibrant, or the 4 pillars that you need to address if you had childhood trauma, however you want to look at it, okay? So the first pillar is emotional regulation. So how adept are you? How able are you to keep your emotions in a place that it feels good to live in, which means not getting upset at the drop of a hat, not flying off the handle, not dealing with anxiety every day for every little situation, right? Emotional regulation like that. And also just keeping yourself centered and peaceful, regardless of what shows up in your life. So if you were to get bad news, if something were happening to a family member, if something was going on out in the world, are you able to keep yourself kind of centered and peaceful in order to deal with that? Like, okay, that's what's happening. What do I need to do? Or is it right away you're a basket case and you can't get yourself regulated, and then you can't sleep, and it sort of becomes an even bigger snowball? So emotional regulation is really, really important, obviously. And it doesn't mean we won't ever have the kinds of emotions that people think of as negative. In my opinion, no emotion is negative. It's just an emotion. It's just, you can't have joy without having upset. You can't have love without having fear at times. So we're human beings. We're going to have the range of emotions. But a lot of people think that certain emotions are bad and they don't want to feel them. And that's actually because of the messaging that they got when they were children. If you were upset when you were a child and nobody allowed you to process that, nobody allowed you to express it, nobody listened to you, or you were even told, stop crying and I'll give you something to cry about, or, whatever it was that you were told, or you saw your parents, flipping out, getting angry, getting upset very easily. All of that is how we learn how to navigate and how to hold ourselves. So the modeling that we have, if it doesn't show any example of somebody who's regulating their emotions, who allows themselves to be upset and then move through it like that, we have no example. And then we have no way of learning. And our nervous system over time has learned to become very dysregulated. So that's what happens, dysregulated nervous system. So that's the first pillar. How is your nervous system? How are you able to regulate when you're having something upset? And how are your emotions on a regular daily basis? Because that's a really big clue. You can just tell right there. If you're always anxious and you're like, I don't even know why, that's a dysregulated nervous system. Okay? So that's the first pillar, your emotional regulation. The second pillar I'm going to call loving discipline. So when you're trying to support a really healthy, vital life, or you're trying to heal from childhood trauma, remember I said it's really the same thing. How you discipline yourself, how you make promises to yourself, how you keep your word to yourself in small little ways. That means, maybe boundaries that you set up for yourself, for other people that are loving. So I don't mean like militant type of discipline. So this was me for many, many years, was hyper exerciser. I had to exercise. I had a schedule. I had a whole thing in my head about it. If I didn't do the thing that day, I beat myself up. That's not loving. That's discipline, but it was militant discipline. And we learn that as well in childhood. We learn by what we see. So in the house, if there was either no discipline, like the grown-ups didn't really discipline themselves, there was just kind of a free-for-all, or you were left to discipline. This is what usually happens. You're left to discipline yourself, and you're 10 years old. But people are at work, or people aren't paying attention, or they're overwhelmed themselves, or it's a single family household, or they're not disciplining themselves, they have addiction or alcoholism themselves, then you're not learning how to discipline yourself, and that carries over. And so now as an adult, if you're wondering why does life feel so hard? Why do I never stick with anything? I want to have a diet, but I don't stick with my diet, or I want to create better communication in my relationships, and I have all these ideas, but I don't stick with it. It's all loving discipline. And starting with keeping your word to yourself and making small promises every day. And again, those boundaries between yourself and the people around you, the people that you live with especially. But the last thing before I move on to the next one is really having it be loving, not having it be militant, not having there be shame around it. Shame is a big thing that we carry from childhood. And shame is an energy and a way that we see ourselves that doesn't allow for joy and vibrancy and health and connection. Shame, when we hold shame, we actually try to hide a part of ourselves. We try to hide what we think is shameful. And shame is going to be the thing that really blocks you, because you're hiding from other people. You have to put a block up if you're holding shame. So when you're thinking about discipline, I just really want to emphasize that. Have it be loving. Don't shame yourself. Do your best to start to create a pattern of keeping your promises. Do your best to start to be your word to yourself. And there's reasons that this would be a whole nother conversation, but there are reasons why let's say we indulge in food or alcohol or things that seem undisciplined, especially when we're like, okay, I'm going on this diet, and I'm going to stop doing this, I'm going to stop doing this, and then 10 days in, there you are. There's deeper reasons why that happens. So sometimes those reasons need to be addressed. So is it just a matter of, I never really learned how to lovingly discipline myself and how to keep my word to myself and how to make promises and set boundaries for myself? Did I never really learn that? Or is there something deeper going on, which would be other work to do, but definitely work that you can do and you can get to the root of. So that was the second one. The third pillar, if you're just dropping in, welcome to the conversation. I see some new people dropping in. So welcome. And we're talking about the 4 pillars that are really critical to have your life feel vibrant and joyful. But they're also the same 4 pillars that we use in reparenting when we've had childhood trauma. So when we've grown up in households where life was really challenging for a variety of reasons, and trauma doesn't have to be the biggest, nastiest thing you can imagine. Trauma can be things that seem like very normal situations, but there was trauma. And that all that means is that the child didn't really get what they needed at that point in their development. It just was missing. Doesn't mean your parents were bad people or didn't love you or whoever raised you. It just was missing for whatever reason. So that's the conversation. And I'm on the third pillar right now, which is self-care. So I see anyway, a lot of stuff on social media about self-care and taking care of yourself. And there's all kinds of posts of, treat yourself to a spa day or do this or that, go set aside and have time with friends. And those are great things, but that's not what I mean by self-care. Those things are sort of breaks from your daily life, right? Oh, I'm going to go have a spa day. Oh, it's been a long time since I had a day out with the girls. I'm going to indulge myself. It's been so long since I bought a new pocketbook or whatever, and I'm going to go indulge myself. So those are indulgent kind of feel good things. That's not self-care in my mind. Self-care that I'm referring to is the very consistent daily practices that you put in place around your physical body, around your spiritual body, and around your mental, emotional body to support, to expand and grow and support those three parts of you. So, what are the daily consistent practices that you do? That to me is self-care. So, for example, do you have a regular sleep schedule? That's enough for your body. You might have a regular sleep schedule, but it's terrible, right? I don't mean that. I mean, do you have a regular sleep schedule that is good for your body, that gives you the sleep that your body needs? Do you connect with people that you love and really connect and share and have some one-on-one time? Do you give yourself alone time? A lot of people are very uncomfortable with alone time. And that's also a remnant from childhood. So being uncomfortable with being alone, what am I missing out on? Being alone is, a biggie in terms of what we're afraid of. What we tend to be fearful of is death, fearful of being alone, fearful of not being known and accepted, fearful of not being loved. Those are the biggies, right? But being alone is one of them. So if you have that fear, you may not be giving yourself you're probably not giving yourself regular alone time. And it's in the alone time when you're not trying to figure out what you're supposed to say to the other person, when you're not trying to be something for someone else, when you're just with yourself, that alone time is actually when you get a better understanding of yourself, when you can sit and be and really listen to the thoughts that you have in your head, but listen to them, and you can really be with your inner self. Super important if you've never done it or you avoid it or you just don't do it all that often. Another thing for self-care would be out in nature. We are spiritual beings. Connecting with nature is good for our spirit. It's also good for our physical body because the sun is what gives our cells and our mitochondria energy. So the sun is important. The fresh air is important. The earth, actually, there's polarity in the earth that helps heal our body. It helps take away the negative polarity in the air from microwaves and cell towers and all that kind of stuff. So being outside with the earth, with the sun, fresh air is great for your physical body, but it's also great for your spirit because on a spiritual level, we are an energetic being, and that's the same energy that runs through us, runs through the trees, runs through nature, and you get more of that kind of energy when you get yourself out there. If people spend, all day inside and only go back and forth to their car, that is detracting from the kind of self-care that I'm talking about. And then what other spiritual work could you do? Meditation, if you meditate, listening to music, prayer, any and all of that is a way to enhance your spiritual work. So looking at your physical body, what do you do? Do you move it regularly? Do you rest it regularly? Do you feed your physical body with the nutrients that it needs, or do you feed it with what your mouth and your emotions are looking for? Very different, very different. So yeah, all of that. And then the last pillar of the four pillars is um, getting in touch with the child that's inside of you, with your childlike spirit. And I say that it is super important, but just look, remember, if you came in late, what I said at the beginning was listen to this conversation through the ears of, how does that apply to my life? Through the ears of, do I do that? Does that show up in my life? So this one, look at how easy is it for you to be silly and playful? I'll tell you why it's important in a minute, but how easy is it for you to be silly and playful? How easy is it for you to be spontaneous? Or are you the type of person that always has to have a list? This is what we need to do. And you can't ask me last minute because I've got my thing planned out and, I need to be in control of what's happening. I can't just pick up and go. I can't be spontaneous. So is spontaneity elusive for you? And allowing things to unfold without being in control? Do you allow yourself to be playful and silly? Do you allow yourself to imagine and dream? What would it be like if we went on this trip? Even if you have no idea of how to make that happen, just imagining and dreaming. So allowing yourself to have childlike wonder is very important because it shifts how you see the world. It shifts how you engage with yourself in your own life. And when we look at childhood trauma, that's something that often gets taken away. Children are allowed to be children when they're in households where there's a lot of stuff, where people are struggling, where there's challenges. The children learn very quickly, I don't want to rock the boat and be more of a burden. So I'm just going to be really good, and I'm not going to be silly and playful, and I don't want to make mom mad, and I'm going to try to do things to help more, or I'm going to take myself away more. But however it shows up, the natural innate desire to just be childlike doesn't get nurtured. So that would be the fourth pillar. And actually, all four of these, what happens is in childhood, there was a missing for each of these and all of these. And maybe as you listened, you heard yourself in all four. Maybe you didn't hear all four, but a couple stood out to you. Whatever it is, it's fine. There's no judgment, no shame about it. It just is what it is. But if you want to have a different experience and you want to heal that, these are the four areas that we go to work on, really allowing the child in you that never got to be nurtured in the way that you needed to get that now. And it's tools to learn. So all four of those pillars were missing. Probably the adults in your life didn't have their own emotions in control, and I don't mean in control like not allowing them and then moving through them, not staying in anger, because that's the other thing, is staying in anger all the time or staying in fear all the time, right? So maybe you didn't have grown-ups that knew how to do that. You didn't have grown-ups that were disciplined themselves. They were just flying by the seat of their pants and trying to figure it out. Or they never took time for self-care. All it was, head down, got to do what we have to do. And then the childlike attributes that we needed when we were trying to grow up. Another part of that I didn't mention is being in wonder of the world. So do you notice how when children, like little toddlers, you take them out, we have a saying, see it through the eyes of a child. There's nothing like Christmas when you have children, right? Be that way in your life about everything. I used to, years ago, not pay attention to nature at all. In fact, if I was going to, you're going to say we're going to go outside camping or for a walk, I would roll my eyes like, when I was a young teenager or a kid. But my household was very challenging. My household growing up had definitely our share of trauma in it. And so I didn't really connect to nature. Now, when I walk, I'll notice the veins on the leaves. I'll notice the clouds in the sky, but like really notice and be with it. Sometimes I see the sun come through the clouds and it takes my breath away, the magnificence of it that I never used to notice. So that's also part of child being, nurturing your inner child is allowing that wonder and that amazement at what is created around us and at what's available and joyful. So being spontaneous, not being controlled, um, allowing yourself to have fun, using your imagination, being in awe of what's outside, like that. Okay. So those are the 4 pillars. That is one container or one big bulk of the work that I do. If you're following me at all anywhere, and if you're here, that means you are, that's the work that I do. And by the way, this is all work that I had to do myself. I got to this place because of my own journey. And what sparked it really was my health. Because what I found, I don't know, think about this for you. Most people, if life is good enough, you're not really looking to do anything any differently. It's fine, it's good enough. Are you always happy and lit up? No, but that's how life is, right? There's no impetus to really do something differently or have it go a different way until there is. For me, the impetus was I got autoimmune issues years ago, more than one. And I was a young person who was into health and wellness and wanted to stay in shape and tried, and I had autoimmune. And I got frustrated over how that journey went. So it was that drove me to start to look and see, oh, my childhood trauma affected my immune system. Yes, it did. Absolutely affects the immune system. The way that I grew up affects how I connect in relationships now. Absolutely. The way that you attached in relationships when you're young is the way that you attach in relationships now, romantic relationships. I'm getting off topic. That's a whole nother conversation. But I'm just, it's all, whatever's going on now is 100% derived from and mapped onto what you first experienced. So if you don't really take a look at that, you're going to always be left with more of that showing up. So that's a huge part of the work I do. And then another huge part, and they're very related, is soul work. So that's our physical body and our physical life, but then there's our soul and our essence of our soul and how our soul came to be created and what's there for us on a soul level. There's what's there for us on a physical level, but what's there on a soul level. And that has been tremendous, really expanding spirituality, expanding consciousness and how I understand that. I wasn't conscious of spirituality and soul work back when all I could think about was surviving in my life. But they are tied together because you can't really think about expanding your spirituality when you're burdened down by those past traumas. It's very difficult. They sort of go hand in hand. Healing the one allows for expanding the other. And as you expand the other, you will heal the one. So that's the work that I do. And if that is resonating with you, if you're feeling like I need that, either all of that or some of that, just reach out to me. Send me a comment, drop me a direct message. If you're on my email list, send me an email and let's talk about how all of that works, okay? Because you deserve to have a really vibrant, joyful life, and you deserve to have the past be in the past and not be showing up now in your present. And I think, it's up to you, but I think you deserve to be deeply connected at a spiritual level, deeply aligned in your body, mind, and spirit, because that brings the most abundant joyful life. Thanks, Deanne, for showing up. Thanks for saying hi. That kind of alignment is what gives you the most abundant life experience while you're here in this physical body. Okay, so thank you for listening. I'm sure, what's today, Wednesday? I'll see you over a cup of coffee in the morning if you ever listen to my morning coffees. And I'll catch you another time soon. And if you have any questions like, oh, I wish you would talk about that, just ask me, put it in the comments so I'll see. And if it's something that I know that I can speak about and make a difference, I'll do that for you, right? So make sure you let me know. All right, have a great day.